While I'm on camera?
Sit down.
Mhm.
It's for us.
Jason
Space
Carney.
for
Pardon
camera.
me?
Jason Carney.
Jason, Jeff
Yes.
Hite, nice to meet you.
Did you film Butch
Colin
too?
Callahan, nice
Oh
to meet
yes, Butch and Dina.
It's
Butch
only
is
fair.
fucking try to charge you for that footage or something.
And that's on
Just sign
camera,
some
yeah.
release or something, so.
Ralph would try to charge us, that's for sure.
Could be, could be. How do we look?
Jeff.
Great.
Good.
Happy lover.
Yes, very
Nice
good.
to meet you too. I'll send this your way. All right, so we're doing a case study, and the three of us are working on the topic of the Music City brand, past, present, and future. Okay. We've met with Butch and his team. Got a lot of great stuff, as well as the current strategic plan for the CVC, CVB.
Okay.
And he gave us a lot of great insight, but we didn't really talk so much about economic impact outside of tourism and what the return on investment is when you convert your overnight stays and all of that stuff. You know, we talk more hospitality, but also part of this case study is past, present, and future, but it's also private, public, and government.
Sure.
How nonprofits and folks like the Chamber, which is a C6 nonprofit, but all function together for this one brand.
Sure.
So we do have some questions to ask, and we're just hoping to kind of hear stories too,
Sure.
but
Come on.
give us as much meat as you got.
Yep.
You want to start?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get my dream of, I've got this,
Oh, a dream.
this dream, I would love for, you know, Nashville, I told you, you think silly. Nashville-based companies, you know, Dollar General, performing in Nashville since 1920. I mean, how that presence and performing into Nashville, I've always thought that'd be cool if everybody picked that up.
Well, we did have dinner the other night
doing?
with
Right.
the Turners, speaking of Dollar General.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the intro.
Sure.
Thank you guys for your time. In your own words, how would you describe the Music City brand?
Okay, I'll take a stab at it, because we do economic development for a living, and that is very business oriented, right? Our job is to create jobs in Nashville. So we have had to learn over a long period of time, what does Music City mean to a business brand? Because it's not about the music, right? And I'll never forget riding around in the car with the head of real estate for Nissan when they were looking at moving their headquarters here. And we had done a songwriter night the night before for their executives. And he said to me in the car that day, he said, Janet, it's not about the music, it's about the creativity behind the music. Music is just the best representation of it. So from an economic development standpoint, we are in the business of promoting this as one of the most creative places in America. Because creativity is what drives companies. It's what attracts people, it's what attracts talent, and talent drives company. So we've learned, and I'd say we've done a good job over the last 10 years or so of saying we are about promoting Nashville as a creative city, and music is the best representation of that creativity. So that to me is, because we work healthcare, we work manufacturing, we work headquarters, we work technology, we weave the Music City brand in, but it's not necessarily about the music, it's about the creative spirit behind the music.
It's a talent magnet. I mean, it attracts a lot of folks, and it's a tough, competitive business. They get here, very few are successful in that business, but the ones that aren't fall in love with the city, the cost of living, quality of life, they end up staying here. So although that industry may have pulled them here, they'd be working at Dell, Dollar General, HCA, so it's just a magnet.
Courtney?
Oh, good add. So leading into the magnet, and it translates also into industry sectors or jobs that we want here, jobs that add to the quality of life here. Right now we have a focus on kind of translating that creativity, that group of people, and also recruiting them through that Music City brand to be to work here in the IT industry. So our Work at Nashville campaign, and we'll share this with you as well. So Work at Nashville, all around IT, but again, all going back to that creativity brand, that Music City brand, which is, you know, put us on the map.
Do you think a similar meeting to this in Atlanta right now would have that sound outside the window?
I don't know where that is. Someone's singing something.
It's the soul of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all throughout.
And people, let's face it, people love music. It resonates in your soul. And what we've learned a long time ago is to make any kind of sale, I mean, a brand is has to have a functional and an emotional benefit. So every city that we compete with, we're all saying the same things. We have a great location in America. We have great people. We have colleges and universities. We have low operating costs. We have golf courses. We have sunsets. The thing that really sets this place apart is this is a city where people come to make their dreams come true. And that's true in healthcare. People move here from all over the world to start healthcare companies and make their dreams come true. But if you think about it, what is more representative of that than a guy taking his hound dog and his guitar and throwing it in the back of the pickup truck and moving to town? So we have learned to be masters at leveraging it. And I'm sure Butch told you this. Until about 10 years ago, Butch's organization has done a fantastic job because this town was a little schizophrenic about the music thing. You know, a lot of the West Nashville people thought that that was too hillbilly and that they wanted to be the Athens of the South. And so there was a lot of angst and heartburn over it. And I would say at least for the last 10 years, probably 15, every one of us that market this city, and it doesn't matter, Downtown Partnership, us, Butch, we all embrace it. We all know you could throw $50 billion and not undo that brand because it's a worldwide known brand. So trying to come up with another brand for Nashville would be a expensive, stupid thing to do.
Well, and the interesting thing is, you know, cities spend millions and millions on brand creation. Ours has just grown organically. I mean, it's natural and authentic. I mean, it's just, it's grown from the 40s and 50s. Well, some people would say back to the Fifth Jubilee Singers, but
Sure.
I mean, it's just grown organically.
Yeah.
So specifically, with the Music City brand, share with us if you have numbers or you have documents you can share that talk to the economic impact. So there's argument out there that tourism is economic development.
Sure, of course it is.
So tell us a little bit about, as quantitatively as you can, how this translates into positive economic development activity.
Sure. So I'd say a couple things. One is tourism is economic development. It's the number 2 employer in this town is the tourism hospitality business. Number 1 is healthcare, which is a good industry sector to be strong in. But it is our number 2 employer. And as I'm sure Butch said, we love these people because they come down here and they leave their money and they go back home, right? So you cannot underestimate the impact of the tourism piece of it. And in Butch's eyes, tourism is music. There is no other, they are intertwined. Now, if you just go to the music industry here, and we have a music industry economic impact study that we can give you, that we just did this past year. It's not just these honky tonks down here on Lower Broadway. It is every aspect of the business, from the songwriters, to the labels, to the costume companies, to the touring companies, to the merchandise companies, to the staging companies. So as an industry sector in and of itself, the employment base is probably not barely in the top 10. But from an image standpoint and an impact standpoint, the music industry itself, and we're always talking about Austin, Texas, right? Live music capital of the world. That's great, but you do not have the companies. You do not have hundreds of music and entertainment companies in that town. You got a bunch of bands down on 6th Street, and that's it. So
It's created here.
Right.
It's born here.
Right, and so having the business of it here, we have about 10 times the concentration of the music business in Nashville as any other city in America, and that counts LA and New York. We are off the charts as far as concentration of the business. So there's that piece of it. And then it is really impossible to quantify what impact it has on, we recruit 30-something companies a year that move here. We've touched 12,000 jobs that have been announced in Nashville over the last 7 months in all industry sectors. And so to say what impact it had on them, it's really hard to connect the dots between music and hand-cooked tire that's going in Clarksville. But I will tell you right now, when the hand-cooked tire guys came to town, they watched that show Nashville in Korea. So we took them up to the set of the show. And then we had Rivers Rutherford, a great songwriter, come and sing to them in the library of the Country Music Hall of Fame that night. And I mean, they were so dazzled by this town that there was no way Birmingham, Alabama, or Columbus, Georgia was gonna stay in it. There was no way. So it has an impact, I think, on all business. It's just not as easy to draw the direct lines between the music and general economic development.
So I'll ask I have a number of questions, but I think you answered a lot. When you're going through the steps, how long have you been in this process? Were you there from the beginning? And then once Music City was decided, because Butch talked about Country Music USA, Country Music Capital of the World. Once Music City was solidified,
Right.
what did that do to your ability to go out and market and say, okay, this is what we are,
Yeah.
and able to get places like Hankook or Nissan or?
I would say in the last 10 years, I've been doing this almost 20,
Yeah.
and we've always used music, and we've always used songwriters and that kind of thing. I think that since the face of music has become so diversified in Nashville, because we took Richard Florida, the creative class leader, over to Jack White's studio when he was here, and took him over to Blackbird Studios, and so people see that it's not country music, it is gospel, it is rock, it is pop, it is bluegrass, it is gospel. And so to me, the fact that the music industry has become so diverse has really helped the image of the city. Because let's face it, back in the 70s when Hee Haw is running, it's very easy for the image of Nashville to be a cornfield, right? That's what Hee Haw was all about. Look today, Taylor Swift is as big a star as anybody in the world, and there's not a lot of hay bales with Taylor Swift or Kings of Leon or
Black Keys,
Kesha or Jack White.
Sheryl
So the
Crow.
diversity of the scene, I think, has helped the image of the city. And people see it more about the creativity because it's become so diverse. I think that. So we've had a field day the last 10 days and we have fun. We have fun with it. People love it. They want to come here because it's just a fun place to visit.
Agreed.
And I would say we incorporated it in almost every site visit, in some way or another. Music and Music City comes up in either conversation or songwriter or a tour, something. It's all incorporated.
We've sent
what we do.
RFPs to companies in mandolin cases. We've decided that even though we're in the job creation corporate business, that leveraging that image in a clever, creative way is a great way to highlight that we are a creative place. So we did an event in New York a few years ago when the CMA Awards went up there, and everybody's all worried about the CMA Awards leaving Nashville. So we did a massive business recruitment mission up there, hosted an event, and did great creative. We can get you a copy of it. That is a picture of the Statue of Liberty, and rather than holding up her torch, she's holding up a guitar. And we had it put on T-shirts, and I run into people shopping wearing those T-shirts because it was very clever. So we were saying, look, let's take your icon and our icon and have some fun with it. And we hosted probably about 250 people at an event, and Kix Brooks and Sarah Evans were the entertainment. And we had CEOs of Wall Street companies, all kinds of New York businesses there to have some fun and hear the national message. So it's a lot easier to come up with creative, interesting ideas than it would be if we were sitting in Little Rock, Arkansas, or Peoria, Illinois, right? I don't know what those people do.
It's not unique.
It was like when I was in Georgia, we would use quail hunting. You take them because that's authentic. And of course, the red carpet tour, would you bring them the Masters?
Sure.
You use
Right.
all
Masters
of those.
is a great tool.
Mhm.
Tool.
So what was the Nashville Chamber's role? We know that the CVC or CVB separated from the Chamber. They were under kind of one auspices at one time. But what was the Chamber's role specifically with the development of the Music City brand? And then now to where we are present, and then future focus?
Right.
What will your role be?
So it's a good question. We had our members involved on the task force when they went through their rebranding, and then Ralph Schultz, our president, was the chairman of the CVB. So the ties have always been strong between the two. I will say this, because you're looking at a branding project here. I don't think any of us have ever thought we need one campaign for everything. Because Butch is reaching a different audience than we are. He's targeting tourists to come in here, and that message, while we all use the overarching Music City brand, their message is it's all about the music, right? They boil it down to being all about the music. Our message is we love the music because it's the best representation of creativity, but come here because the business case makes sense, and it's a place people love to live. So we've got a different message and a different audience from Butch. So we co-brand things together sometimes, but I think if cities try to develop one slogan or one campaign for all purposes, that it is limiting. And we all know that we embrace and love Music City. We join together where it makes sense. But for instance, this Work It campaign isn't Work at Music City, right? It's Work at Nashville. Now we've got a lot of imagery and information in here on the music business, but we're targeting technology executives to move to Nashville. So they're interested in the music business, but it's not the primary value proposition for them. So you'll see different levels. So trying to have one militant, overarching campaign for a whole city for everything, I think would be a big mistake.
So I always would like to, I'm a native of Nashville, so I always like to get an idea of where you guys come from. I know, it's an inside joke.
What part of town did you grow up in?
So my family is kind of centered in Bellevue. There's a historical marker out there. But I lived on every side of town but south. So I'm not as familiar with the South Nashville, but north, east, and west.
Okay.
Yeah, north mostly, kind of the Jefferson Street, Scoville area. That's where I grew up. So I went
We
to.
both grew up here in
Yeah.
Nashville.
Hendersonville for me.
We've got some locals, finally.
Yeah, yes.
I grew up over in West
West
Nashville and
Nashville.
Hillwood, so went to 8 public schools. So I went to schools all over. I went to HG Hill, 2 HG Hills, Brookmead, John Erling, Wharton, then Peabody Demonstration School, which is now University School, and then Hillwood High School. So
Awesome.
been all over the county, yeah. So
So where did you grow up?
Hendersonville.
Oh, you did?
What part of Hendersonville?
All over. But I moved back there, I say back from
he's
Nashville.
old. He's old enough to be your father. Sorry.
Hey, watch it.
He doesn't look it.
We live up there now off of Saundersville Road.
He's
But I grew up back in the Indian Lake area,
I grew up in Indian Lake area.
Cumberland Hills.
Okay.
Daddy.
They are.
That's
We've been
hilarious.
being mean to Jeff all along.
Colleen's actually gonna be 50 next year, so.
Oh, well, maybe y'all are twins.
Doesn't she look great?
Awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know what
That's
ice cream you're using.
Yeah. And I'm from Memphis.
Ah, okay.
Oh,
3 hours
wow.
west.
Jeez. I'm from Cleveland Heights.
We're all
Ohio.
Tennesseans. We've got that in common.
Yeah.
Courtney, it's interesting, Courtney worked at the Austin, Texas Chamber before she came up here. So she was a really good get for us. I
Yes,
hadn't
so
known her before.
So that I've always, people, when I comment so I started here, then went back to Memphis, then to Austin, and then here, people say, you're always in music towns.
Mm-hmm.
And,
True.
and it has kind of always woven into what I've done wherever I've been in terms of what that economic development is. Nashville probably has the strongest brand in terms of the music industry. Austin, live music capital, but not the business side of it, not the impact of that business and the publishing companies and the record labels. It is truly just the live music stuff you hear out here, and another cool place to be. But the music brand belongs to Nashville.
So, given that, what have you seen? I always like to, before the Titans, before Predators, and then the
World.
and then the Music City. What has been your experience, and what are your feelings about Nashville today as opposed to when you grew up?
Outside of the physical expansion, the most amazing thing to me is the diversification of the music industry. I mean, if somebody told you in the mid-70s that, you know, one of the greatest rock and roll bands would be from Mount Juliet, the Kings of Leon, Jack White, all the ones we mentioned earlier, would be making music and living in Nashville, from Nashville, I think a lot of people would have said,
It's just
come on.
country, yeah.
Come on, it's just country. So the fact that that industry's been able to diversify and,
Even in the last 10 years.
yeah, right.
I mean, 5 years even, I would say.
I mean, you think downtown's gonna grow, you know, over the year, and the convention center's in a lot of South Grove, the baseball stadium north of town. So that's just gonna happen naturally, but to me, the music industry being so different now is the big surprise.
I don't think we can sell short. If Nashville didn't have the music industry, I don't believe we would be the leading job creator in America right now. There's a flavor that it brings to this town that is attracting a whole lot more than music. And I like to tell this story. My father was 87 when he passed away 2 years ago, and when he got out of Vanderbilt back in the 40s, he was going where the job was. He was going to go to work for a great company. And it didn't matter where it was. He was all about that, going to work for a brand name company. They could have sent him to East Egypt, nowhere. He didn't care. It was about the company. If you fast forward to today, I cannot tell you how many young managers we've hired on this team that have moved to Nashville. They don't have a job. They pick the city they want to be in.
Right.
And everybody's so educated and confident in this generation, they're not worried about finding a job. They're worried about being happy. And so they pick their city and then find the job opportunity. So what that means is, when my dad was looking for the job, cities just had to have great companies, right? It didn't matter about having parks or sports or symphony halls, because people were going to go where the companies are. And these days, we spend as much time working on being sure this is a place that people want to be, because if you attract people, you attract companies.
Right.
So the formula over 50 years has completely flip-flopped. And I think that is good, because Nashville truly is one of the places in America right now that people want to be. And not just any people, it's typically young, bright, educated people who are like, there's something cool, that's a cool town. You know?
Did you see the Time Magazine article yesterday?
No?
Oh, you've
I
got to
need
see
to
it.
forward that.
As Ralph said, it's a love letter to Nashville.
It
John
is.
I
Beecher
was
wrote
reading
it.
Dial Tile, you know, on the Dial
Right.
Tile.
Yeah,
Patty just
we worked on
posted it.
that.
Yeah.
No, but it's Nashville, the country's red hot city. I don't know.
The
what
South, the red hot city of the South
Yeah.
is the
Mhm.
title of the article. You have to
Oh, I
find
think I
it.
got a posting on that, didn't
Patty
we?
just
A few
posted
minutes
it
ago?
to our
Take a look
class.
at it. It was a
Great article.
beautiful representation of what's going on in the town right now.
And of course, Butch would tell you they don't want to be the it city, because that means transitional and temporary.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, I think people have overdone, and that headline came out, and I always cringe a little bit when you hear that, you know. But you know what's unique about Nashville too, and I think a lot of it is what we've been talking about. Average guy on the street who lives here loves this town.
Mm.
And you go to some other cities, and people gripe about their town.
Mhm.
But here, most people are pretty proud of it. I mean, I have never heard Mayor Dean give a speech that hasn't ended with the words, "This is a city whose best days are ahead of it." And I think that many, many cities in America don't feel that way. They feel like they've reached their peak and they're behind, or that they'll never get there. And and they talk about that in that Time article. It's like a hum. There's a
pride.
There's a
factor.
pride of the city right now, and I think the music industry has really, really contributed to that.
I think Dina talked about there's more layers to peel still
Yes.
to expose
I'm sure.
the city. I called it a black hole. I said, I could never leave it. You go and you're like, I gotta get back. This is it's not working.
Nashville, the black hole.
Right.
I hope that's not your new branding statement for the city.
Oh, no, it's just my personal brand.
I wish.
That's what it is.
Our role, unfortunately, is not to be creative. It's simply
It's to
to
do the
provide a
case
case study.
Yeah.
Yep. You had mentioned being leading job creator, or the leading job. Where is that quoted? Where do you take that from? What source has said this?
We can get.
Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Jeff can cite it. He keeps up with it better than anybody.
And it changes month to month.
We led the country in 2012. Metro's over 1 million. And in 2013, we were number 2. behind Houston.
Uh-oh.
Energy.
I think the top four,
Oh.
three of the top four were in the state of Texas.
Texas town. Energy towns have
Right.
all done well. Oklahoma City, a lot of the Texas towns have all done well, so.
But we can get you those
But
numbers and
that's
stats.
pretty amazing.
That would be
Highest
great.
percentage job growth of any city
Mm-hmm.
over 1 million people in America. I mean, that, you do not grow that many jobs without attracting people.
And within 20 years, we're gonna have another million.
We are,
Right.
Mhm.
We need some transit.
we are. Note to file.
We got that on
With
video.
music.
Yeah.
There's a monorail bill in the House I was reading today.
Oh my.
There's all sorts of things going through right now.
It's crazy.
The good thing about that is everybody's talking about transit. I mean,
Yeah.
whether you're
You
for
have
this or
to.
against this, but there's a dialogue that people know that in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, we're gonna need it. So it's good that the conversation started.
I always use my wife as a test case, and she said, you know, you're going to see Bredesen tonight. Could you tell him about the roads? I was like, I'm not going to have that kind of access to him. But I was like, the average person on the street is like, yeah, we got to do something.
Sure.
You know.
And see, we're recruiting all these employers, like we work with UBS, they're getting ready to hire 1,000 people downtown. And they're coming out of New York, and they care about transit, because they're gonna be hiring a lot of young, right out of college students who don't necessarily wanna be a 2-car family. They may wanna live in the Gulch and take public transit. And they're used to it in New York. I mean, you jump on the subway or
And it does.
whatever you do. So, so these companies that are building the economies here care about transit, so.
How has the brand champion program by the CDC played a role in bringing new companies here, or has it?
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I think that's more the hospitality industry focused versus
Having
us.
people be champions of the brand.
Yes.
And then
They have a training program where they train folks, I believe that's the program, where they
Mhm.
train folks on
Yeah.
the tourism industry and the impact.
Yeah.
But I think that's
More
self-contained to
tourism, more
the
tourism.
hospitality industry.
It doesn't cross over into us.
Good idea.
I have to ask, where are the challenges? What do you see going forward? I mean, besides transit,
Sure.
just as far as the Music City brand, do you want to bring more genres into the fold, or I know that you're
Yeah.
more focused on the business side of
Yeah.
it, but is there an opportunity for other companies and bring in other types of companies, other style of companies? Would a Google want to be here?
Sure.
Um,
I mean, we're actively pursuing, we pursue by target industry sector. And so
Yeah.
the technology sector is very important to us, so the Googles of the world are very important. We focus on healthcare, we focus on manufacturing, music, entertainment, logistics, and corporate headquarters are what we focus on. I will say one of the biggest threats to the Music City brand has nothing to do with Nashville, but it has to do with how the music industry is under siege.
Right.
Because it's the model, I mean, the average kid today believes music should be free. And this is a town that has thousands and thousands of people who need to make a living in the business, and when their music's getting stolen, and they're not getting paid, I mean, if you hang around Music Row people at all, there's a whole lot of woe is me in the business because of the changing models. And it's interesting because different sectors come up. So for instance, the music publishing business is one of the more lucrative sub parts of the business. The merchandise business, the touring business is where the money's being made. It's not being made by the record labels anymore. So to me, it's not what we're doing, but the music industry is going to continue to shrink just because of the payment model. And so to me, that's a threat. I will say 2 other things are a threat to Nashville in general. It's not about Music City, but just Nashville. Number one is we need to all care about public education quality, because we are working to attract smart companies and smart people, and they will not accept a substandard education system. So we spend a lot of time and energy here at the Chamber focusing on improving Davidson County schools and all the schools in the region. And then the final thing is you keep attracting 35,000 new people a year to your town, and you better care about roads, water, infrastructure. I mean, all of those things to support the growth. Because we get out to Atlanta and call on companies a couple times a year. And I mean, you sit down on those highways during rush hour,
You sit
think,
down on
that's
those highways.
right. And you think, if
Mhm.
we just sit around in Nashville and let this growth continue without having a vision and a plan, we will be Atlanta. So that is a threat that I think, and that's a regional issue. It can't just be Carl Dean and Davidson County. It has to be every government in the Middle Tennessee region.
How do you use the Music City brand in your recruitment strategies, outside of working with site selectors who may come here and you entertain them and wine and dine, you take the show on the road? How else do you tangibly use the Music City brand? So when you co-promote, do you literally use the logos and the taglines that the CVC uses?
We'll use, we'll embed videos. We've been using technology Jeff's gotten really good at. Nick Holland's got a company called Popular that does, how would you describe it? They're
One page
microsites. So we'll send out promotional emails to every site consultant in America that may have video embedded. We've got Music Council got a great video promoting Nashville's music business. Y'all need to get a copy of that. We need to email that over to them.
What's the name of it?
Is it Music Calls? No, it's not music. It's Music City Music Council's promotional video, and it is on YouTube. If you Google that, and you can
Kings
see
of
it.
Leon,
The Kings of
Kings of
Leon
Leon
is the intro.
song. But it's purely to show to music and entertainment companies, it's a recruiting tool. But it's trying to show the hip, multi-genre face of Nashville rather than country. And it's really powerful. Courtney and I use it. We go over and lecture at Vanderbilt to classes routinely, and the kids just love it. So honestly, in virtually everything we do, you'll see some, if it's marketing and promotional. Now, if somebody if they're issuing an RFI and it's a Excel spreadsheet that we're filling out demographics, which we'll do a dozen a month of those, you won't put it in. But anytime we can put some flavor of it in there, we try to do that.
And we mentioned, the songwriters and things that we do on the inbound visits, and we've talked a little about the outbound, but we'll, look at calendars of who's touring. We did a big event with Kenny Chesney was playing in San Francisco, and San Francisco is one of our markets, technology companies and companies that we're going after and have contacts with. So we'll pick, a Nashville-based artist who, and get a suite at their show in a different city, and then bring people from that area to the show. And we learned through those experiences that there are a lot of country music fans in this world. And we know that, but when people are fighting over those tickets just because they want to go see Kenny Chesney, and as a result they hear more about the Nashville brand and Nashville as a business location, it just works so well. And we don't take for granted that that's something that we're able to do. New York, California, Chicago, wherever that is.
Who generally provides the relocation packets for Nashville? Is it the Chamber or the CVC?
For
For
residents?
Nashville, for residents,
We
or
do
your
quite a few.
doctors, your your professionals that come
We
here?
have a service here through the Chamber that anybody wants to move here, we basically do that. So Butch is all about heads and beds on the short term, and we're all about getting people here over the long term, so. And I'm sure we can get you one of those relocation packages if
Great.
you like. So,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And we can send you a slide deck of like a standard presentation that we'll do for a company that's moving here. But you'll see the photography, everything that we do, we try to include the music piece of it. I mean, you have to try really hard to not do that in this town because it permeates so much of what we do,
You said something very interesting about not even in the top 10 music. You talk about the top industries and so on. So where does it fall if you bring it all together?
We have to look at the employment. We'll have to pull the impact study. It may be 5 or 6. I could be wrong.
Well, the employment, I'll pull the number. The employment it's 2 or 3. It's just in the 50 to 60,000 range. You got manufacturing at 70. You got healthcare at 210. It's in the top 5.
Yeah.
And then economic impact, I believe their latest numbers were $6 billion.
$6 billion
or
annual economic
Yeah.
impact, yeah. So it does have big impact, but it's kind of funny. It has a disproportionate impact on the economy of the city. It isn't directly related to the employment, whereas manufacturing is going to be pretty much tied to the employment. because it's the image and the brand of the city.
So, Butch, and in your brand promise,
Mhm.
it talked about the creative part,
Right.
which you have great quotes on, but also talked about risk taking.
Mhm.
So he talked about all the risks that he took and, you know, the naysayers.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little from your side, the risks that you took and kind of the outcomes,
Yeah.
up or down, good or bad? But,
I worked with the team when we developed that brand promise.
Mhm.
And you know, when you're developing brand promises, we harangued and argued. I mean, I didn't think we'd ever get to the brand promise. But the entrepreneurial risk-taking piece of it was a really, really important piece of that brand promise. Because if you just look at the history of business in Nashville, this town has been built by entrepreneurial risk takers. If you go back to Jack Massey and all of the companies he started and took public on the New York Stock Exchange, and Kentucky Fried Chicken, and you look at Ryman building the Tabernacle here, that was a risk. And you just look at the essence of the music industry. You don't get in the music industry without being a risk taker, because the odds are against you being successful. So we felt like that risk-taking and entrepreneurism was a key part of the brand statement for business in Nashville, and we love that and want to continue to embrace that. We don't want to be a risk-averse place. We want to foster people who are coming up with the new ideas. And you know what's really fun is go up to the Entrepreneur Center and look at some of the startup companies that they're incubating that are where music and entertainment collide with technology. And you talk about risk takers, is these young guys like Matt Ermey, who's got Artist Growth Company, or Nick Holland with Popular, who are taking risks to try to build a better mousetrap in an industry that is under siege and under complete chaotic change. It's a fun thing about the city.
We just had our last class up there, as a matter of fact.
Good. Yeah.
And some of us got torn apart.
Oh, about Michael?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He is so beautiful with his
You and I got torn apart.
Yes, we did.
You didn't have the opportunity, right?
He can be he's so beautiful and polite with his words, but he will cut you to shreds, you know? But you know what, here's the thing, you're going to go get $100 million from a company, that's what's gonna happen, so you may as well get it done and learn the lesson, but that's funny, that's funny.
He did
he
apologize
teach
to
one
me
of your
afterwards.
classes?
He did.
Wow.
Yep.
And then you got a test.
Well, we're all working on a master's project,
Yeah.
you know, and what are we gonna do, and what are we working on, and so we presented, some of us, whomever he called, presented
Our elevator speech.
our elevator speech on,
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
He had some choice words for you.
He did have some very productive engagement strategies, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Wait, I'm using those words again. Number one, he said I talk too big. I've got a 5th grade level, and I sound like a damn bureaucrat. I said, well, I kind of am.
I am a damn bureaucrat.
And you can go talk to the governor of that, and I just sent Governor Haslam an email that morning about this project, Dream It, Do It, manufacturing. I said, I just emailed him this morning. I believe it, he said. And this is in front of everybody, you know, we're all sitting there.
Yeah.
Everybody's hoping they're not gonna get called up.
Please,
Mhm.
don't me.
But I did have good takeaways. You know, if you open yourself up, and I definitely had some good takeaways, and one was more focused and targeted. So it was good. Great guy. I mean, it was well worth it,
Yeah.
for sure, to get
Yeah, he's broken a
beaten
lot.
down by him.
I worked on that project to get it set up, and I actually was the one who begged Michael to come take the job, and I raised the original money. And I remember talking to Towns Duncan at Solidus during the process, and Towns said, he goes, you know the most important job in that place? I said, what? He goes, you gotta have somebody who sits at a desk and says every single day, don't quit your day job. It's like, that is the most important, because every entrepreneur thinks that
Has
they
their
have
training
their
and the
idea
best.
and that they're the smartest and the best, and that's just not the way the world is. But yeah, they've added a lot, I think, to the landscape here.
Mhm.
That risk-taking piece, you know. So
You have about 5 minutes.
yeah.
That's it on.
No. Make sure we get it all out.
Well, you guys have a lot of follow-up for us.
Yes,
I've
we
heard
do.
you
I
all
took
say, I'll
notes.
take that, I'll take that.
I
We
took
appreciate
notes.
it.
What is, So what are your next steps in terms of, or what are some
Yeah,
other
what's your
things we can?
deliverable for your product? What are you hoping to get to?
Well, there's a very specific deliverable that we have to achieve. One's gonna include recording, so we have to have somebody come down and be video, because it'll be an electronic format. We have to do a paper and a presentation, an oral presentation. But in the long run, it's all gonna be digital.
Mhm.
So we've gotta fit all of this into that. And it isn't creativity, it truly is a case study.
Mhm.
We just happened to pick this one, although it took us a long time.
Mhm.
But we got
Is
it.
your take, after listening to all these people, that it is a brand that we need to continue to promote and support and build on, or something else?
I can't fathom, I mean, authenticity is the key to success, I think, with destination marketing anyway, without a doubt. You know, you can't recreate that, and if you have it, capitalize upon it. It's obviously working.
Mhm.
All projections, all successes, awards, recognitions, you know, nationally, internationally. Companies relocating here for quality of life, cost of living in many cases. Yes, institutes for higher education and hospitals and all of those reasons. But you've gotta have what we have, which is the Music City brand. So I can't imagine diverging from that, just growing in diversity. But Jason and I and Colleen, you know, we've talked, and of course Jason was like, you know, where did this all start? It did start with the Jubilee Singers. You know, let's remember some heritage here. Why aren't we capitalizing upon that? So I guess we've talked about, why aren't we capitalizing upon that? We see just a glimpse of it,
Yeah.
and we see a picture of it in the CBB, or CBC now, but, you know, why aren't we capitalizing
And we've
upon all of
actually
that?
I love to use them for events and all. I mean, you don't get knocking
You get
someone's socks
chills.
off.
Yes.
People just can't believe
Mhm.
it, you know.
I literally get chill. I've only heard them
Yeah.
once. I literally got chill.
They're just
goes,
unbelievable. And you know what
resonates.
we did once that was really fun, is
Sorry.
that dang marching band at TSU is awesome. We had a big event in town, and we had a line, the walkway between two events
Hall
where
of
they
Fame
were
and
walking.
Hilton,
Yeah, and that
Oh,
was great.
cool.
That was so much fun. People, and then that time we did it, coming off the General Jackson, and people wouldn't go in, cause they were just having so much fun. So any variety or piece that we can use. But I will say, I think it was really counterproductive back 15 years ago when people were arguing over it and trying to make it something that it couldn't.
So can you tell us a little bit about that before you have to go?
Well, I mean, to me, I love the Athens of the South name, I really do, because the higher education here, that's our biggest selling point. We can tell, look, we got 110,000 college students here, 60% of them stay in Nashville when they graduate. So talk about a workforce pipeline. The universities are our #1 asset. But to me, us using the Athens of the South as a tagline for economic development, it doesn't resonate.
The emotion's not there.
Yeah, it doesn't make the
You have to
emotional
explain it.
connection. It's almost like so many cities just like try too hard and they come up with these goofy taglines, and I laugh.
Or logos, yeah.
In our business, I'll go to any economic development conference with a bunch of economic developers, and you would not believe, I bet it's happened 100 times to me, where some other person from another city comes up and says, oh, I've got an idea for you. You ought to be the city of note, or we're playing your song, or they come up with all these incredibly lame, like, or they'll like draw things out, and you're like, oh my, you know. And the thing I'll say about Butch, and I think our work too, is we're very careful to use it in a sophisticated way, and a clever way, and not a cheesy way. Because you can get real cheesy with music,
Easily.
right? I mean, and we really like, we figure if we're gonna be seen as a creative city, we need our creativity. I mean, this piece right here won the top award possible from the International Economic Development Council for any
Great.
marketing campaign for any city in America. So we figure we're competing with the best of the best, so we best have the best creative in the country, so.
Boy, that's flattering for my EDC.
Yeah, it was the top winner for IEDC this year, so.
That's great.
I know, that was
Wow,
good.
I didn't.
I would say
have
back
that.
to the Athens of the South, I think it's not as much as a differentiator as it was when it was first. You know, because there's a lot of good university towns, there's a lot of good, you know, music is still the differentiator. It's still, and the emotional connection, it's not, and there's a lot of towns with really good workforce, or like really good universities, and and student populations, and so we've got that and this unique brand that not many cities can claim.
Boy, that's a great quote. Music is the differentiator.
Mhm.
You heard Janet talk about workforce pipeline, the two words that Michael shot me down for being too bureaucratic.
What were they?
Workforce pipeline. I was talking about the mass exodus of baby boomers in manufacturing.
Mhm.
And with advanced manufacturing being so strong, with the governor's Brookings report coming out on automotive and OEMs, and we've got to find this talent pipeline, this workforce pipeline. It's like
That's
bureaucratic. No one's gonna listen to that.
What did he
What's
suggest?
the
You said?
alternative?
Well, he said I need to
Talent
know
for
my
sure.
audience, and I said my audience is going to be Department of
Bureaucrats.
Labor, governor.
Exactly.
Well, they understand
Exactly.
workforce pipeline.
He said no. What about the youth you're trying to get into manufacturing? I said, well, that's kind of a different part of the project.
Mhm.
I said, so with respect, that's next.
I mean-
First you gotta get it.
Yeah, sorry.
What did you guys think on the I thought that was a good question Jen asked about, do we keep the brand,
I mean, I think you hit it right when you were talking about the authenticity piece.
Mhm.
Bush talked a lot about, and Dina talked about how we're such an authentic city.
It's real, right.
It
It's the
really
real thing. It's
is.
not fabricated. It's real.
Exactly, and I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, so for me,
You
it's
gotta turn the camera
Turn
on.
it
I'm
around.
not turning the
Can you get it flipping around?
Very good.
briefly.
Yeah, there
Is
you
this
go.
what they call a selfie?
Yeah. At least you got on there for a second.
Yeah. So I'm used to my granddad telling me about the Jefferson Street of old, when Tina Turner and
Right.
all these people used to
Hendrix
come
and all
into
of
town.
that was-
Hendrix, yeah, he's about to have a biopic coming. Well, not a biopic. I don't think his estate has approved of it, but it's a big deal. So,
Some people say he learned to play guitar in Nashville.
When he was
yeah,
at Fort
because he was a
Campbell.
blues guy back
Yeah,
then.
All
Yeah.
those blues guys were
Right.
great.
Yeah. And if that's true, then that means that this lady that was the girlfriend of this, of one of the Rolling Stones is the one that gave him his guitar here, possibly.
Yeah.
So again, back to what Dina was saying and what I agree with is there are more layers
Oh, yeah.
that could be used to attract different types of companies
Right.
and businesses here
And people.
and people.
Right.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah, if you
that.
ever get to hear Jimmy Church talks about all those old blues and R&B, the history that were here, and it's a shocking how this was such an R&B and blues center.
Yes.
Right in the 60s and the 70s, and they're still around. Those old guys still playing,
Yeah.
Don Maddox's husband played with them for years, so.
No.
Do you guys have any other recommendations of who we should be
So you talked to
speaking to?
Butch and us.
That's a good
Anyone else?
question.
Well,
I was trying to
we've
remember
reached
what
out to Mayor Dean and copied a few folks on down the line on his staff to get him to respond to us.
Matt Wilshire, Chris Parham.
Chris Parham would be good for you to talk to. He's running the music council for the mayor.
Oh,
And
good
he may be
idea.
able to pull Randy Goodman if he's.
What about somebody
Randy
like-
Goodman's so active at Lipscomb, surely y'all can get to Randy Goodman.
What about somebody like Jack White, who moved his operation from Detroit to Nashville and has Third Man Records?
Go Third
And,
Man.
I mean, it would be good to get his perspective on what drew him to Nashville. And
How much time you got?
Put on to-do list, go see
Do
Jack
next
White.
week.
Go see Jack White.
Pretty much,
at
we should
Third
probably
Man.
wrap all of our interviews up by the end of next week if we're gonna.
Yeah.
If we're
File
gonna have,
anything.
yeah.
You should
Randy,
definitely
what was
talk to
the
Chris
records?
Parham though.
What was,
Well, either get
I
Chris,
think Randy Goodman
Goodman.
is the chair of the City Music Council, which is the industry group, and he's a, fellow or something at Lipscomb. He teaches over there, so he should be.
Okay, yeah.
I think he's a Lipscomb alumni, isn't
And then Chuck
Chris Parham.
he? Chris Parham
got,
is in
yep.
the mayor's office, yeah. He
What,
runs
what was the
music
record
council
company you
stuff.
just said?
Third Man Records,
Jack White.
Jack White.
If you've got this thing to do in a week, I doubt you're gonna get to see Jack White.
You
You never know, we got Richard Ford in there,
Mhm.
saying happy birthday to the mayor.
Could you help make that happen?
Yes.
I'm just kidding. Chris Parham may be able to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't think.
Well, all right, I have a place out.
Well, thanks for your time.